Hi, this is Taehyung. I've always believed that music tells the truth even when words can't. Every time I step on stage, I try to leave a piece of my heart behind. But that night, something was different. When I sang that song, it felt like the whole world went silent for a moment, as if everyone could feel exactly what I was feeling. I didn't plan it, I didn't even try to hide it. The emotions just came out raw, real, and honest. Some people said they could see it in my eyes, others said they could hear it in my voice. They started wondering who I was thinking about, who was behind those emotions. But maybe the truth isn't about a person at all. Maybe it's about a feeling, one that we've all known but rarely say out loud. Tonight, I want to tell you the story behind that song. Not from the stage, not through lyrics, but from me, as Taehyung, just speaking to you heart to heart. I still remember that night like it just happened yesterday. The stage lights were soft, the audience was quiet, and for a moment I felt like I was standing in the middle of a dream. When the music started, I took a deep breath, and before I even realized it, my heart began to speak through the song. Many people later said they saw something different in my eyes that night. They said I looked emotional, almost fragile. Some even said they could feel my pain through the lyrics. And honestly, they were right because I wasn't just singing, I was remembering. That song wasn't just another performance, it was a reflection of something I had been hiding for a long time. Emotions that I couldn't talk about, moments I tried to forget, and someone I thought I had already moved on from. But when I stood there holding that microphone, everything came back to me. Her smile, her voice, the way she used to laugh when I said something silly. It was like time folded in on itself, and I was standing face to face with the past. Fans were quick to notice. They're always observant, always connected to my emotions in a way that feels almost spiritual. They started to ask questions online. Who was Taehyung thinking about? Why did he look so sad? And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew that what they saw wasn't just acting, it was real. Singing that song felt like opening an old wound, one that never really healed. I had promised myself to keep my feelings private, to never let the world see what's behind the smile. But music has its own way of revealing the truth. When I sing, I can't lie. My voice carries everything I feel: joy, pain, regret, and love. That night, all of it came out. After the show, when I went backstage, the silence felt heavy. The other members didn't ask anything. They just gave me a quiet pat on the shoulder, like they understood without words. That's something I've always been grateful for, how they can sense when my heart feels too full to speak. I sat there, alone for a moment, still holding the mic. I could feel my pulse through my fingertips. And in that quiet space, I whispered to myself, "You did well, but maybe you revealed too much." Because sometimes when I sing, I forget where the line is between art and emotion. And that night, I think I crossed it. The truth is, there really was someone behind those emotions. Someone who once made me feel like the world was brighter, warmer, and lighter. Someone who taught me what it meant to love without fear, and also what it felt like to lose that love. I never told anyone her name. Maybe I never will. But that night, every lyric, every note was a piece of her story written through me. Some people might say it's just a performance, but for me, it was more than that. it was closure or maybe a way of keeping the memory alive. I'm not even sure. All I know is that when I sing songs like that, it's not just about reaching the audience, it's about being honest with myself. So when fans noticed, when they became suspicious, I wasn't upset. I was touched because it meant they could feel something real. It meant my music still connects hearts even when it comes from a place of sadness. That night taught me something, that pain doesn't always have to be hidden. Sometimes it can be transformed into something beautiful, something that helps others heal too. And maybe that's why I keep singing, even when it hurts. Because through music, I can tell my truth without saying her name. When the concert ended, I went back to my hotel room and sat by the window watching the city lights fade into the early morning. My voice was tired, but my mind was louder than ever. I kept replaying that performance in my head, wondering why I let myself get that vulnerable on stage. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't have sung it any other way. There are moments in life when you can't fake strength anymore. That night was one of those moments for me. I've always believed that my fans' army can feel the truth in my voice. They know when I'm happy, when I'm hurting, and when I'm trying to hide behind a smile. It's strange, but they can see through everything. And maybe I wanted them to. The song I sang wasn't written for anyone specific, at least not officially, but the emotions behind it were real. The melody came from a place of silence, from a part of my heart I don't show often. I remember the first time I heard the demo, I just sat there, closing my eyes, and felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just about love, it was about loss, distance, and the kind of longing that doesn't fade no matter how much time passes. People think being an artist means you always have control. Control over what you show, what you hide, and how much of yourself you give away. But that's not true. Sometimes a single note can betray you. A single word can open every wound you thought had healed. That's what happened that night. When I sang, I thought of her not as someone I missed, but as someone who taught me how to feel deeply. She wasn't famous. She wasn't part of the industry. She was just real. She listened when I talked about music, about my dreams, about the pressure that comes with being Taehyung in front of the world. She never treated me like a celebrity. She just saw me, the boy, behind the lights. We met before everything became too loud, before every move I made was watched and analyzed. We laughed about the smallest things, talked about art, nature, and how sometimes silence says more than words ever could. But life has its own rhythm. And when fame grew louder, that silence we used to share became harder to find. One day, without saying it directly, we both knew it was time to let go. It wasn't a fight, it wasn't anger, it was just timing, the kind that doesn't work even when hearts do. I remember her last words to me. She said, "Promise me you'll keep singing even when you're sad." And that's exactly what I did. That promise is why that performance meant so much to me. It wasn't just a concert, it was me keeping my word. Every emotion I poured into that song was a conversation I could no longer have in person. After that night, I read some fan comments online. They said things like, Taehyung looked like he was about to cry, or it's like he was thinking of someone he lost. Some fans even made compilations analyzing my expressions, my breathing, the way I looked down after the last line. It was almost surreal how much they understood without me saying anything. But what touched me the most wasn't the curiosity, it was the empathy. People didn't judge, they just felt with me. They left messages saying, "We hope you're okay. Your emotions reached us. Whoever you were thinking of, she must have been special." Reading those words made me realize something. I wasn't alone in my emotions. My pain had become a bridge, connecting me to millions of hearts who also knew what it felt like to miss someone deeply. Music does that, it turns personal pain into shared healing. And maybe that's the real reason I sing the way I do, because every note carries a piece of my story, but it also finds a home in someone else's heart. That night, after hours of silence, I finally smiled to myself. I thought about her again, not with sadness, but with gratitude, because even though she's no longer here, she helped me find a deeper version of myself. The version that can stand on stage and let go of pride, fear, and control and just feel. People might stay suspicious, guessing who she was, connecting dots that don't exist, but the truth is, the person behind my emotions doesn't need to be known. What matters is the emotion itself, the honesty, the vulnerability, and the way it reaches people. When I closed my eyes that night before sleeping, I whispered something I hadn't said in years. Thank you. Not just to her, but to everyone who still believes in the sincerity of my music. Because at the end of the day, that's what I live for, not perfection, but truth. And that truth, it will always find its way into my songs. The morning after that performance, everything felt different. When I woke up, my phone was already filled with notifications, messages from friends, from staff, and from fans all over the world. Some were worried, some were curious, and some said that my performance made them cry. I didn't expect that much reaction. I didn't even check the trends right away. But when I finally did, I saw my name everywhere. Taehyung emotional on stage. Who was he thinking of? The mystery behind Taehyung's song. It was strange seeing my emotions become headlines. The moment that felt so private suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. People started analyzing my body language, comparing that performance with my past ones. Some said I looked lost. Others said it was the most sincere performance I've ever given. I didn't know whether to feel grateful or exposed. Later that day, during a meeting with the team, one of the staff members said softly, "That performance, people are saying it's your most honest one." I smiled, but inside I was conflicted. Honesty is powerful, but when millions of people are watching, it can also be heavy. Being vulnerable on stage isn't something I plan, it just happens. But once it's out there, I can't take it back. There's always a part of me that wants to protect the quiet parts of my life. The world sees Taehyung, the artist, the idol, the public figure. But the version of me that feels deeply, that gets lost in a song, that still misses someone quietly, that part rarely gets seen. And when it accidentally does, the world starts to ask questions I'm not ready to answer. I remember one interview a few days after that performance. The host asked me, "You seemed very emotional that night. Was there a specific reason?" I smiled and said, "Music always brings out emotions, especially when it comes from a real place." It wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't the full truth. Sometimes the truth is too personal to say out loud. After that, more articles came out. Some claimed they knew who the song was about. They brought up old rumors, old pictures, old connections. It became noise. The kind of noise that makes you forget what's real and what's speculation. But I didn't respond. I stayed quiet because I've learned that silence can protect the things you still care about. Still, in the middle of that chaos, I felt something beautiful too. Fans started posting messages saying they related to the song, that it helped them heal from their own heartbreaks. Some said my voice gave them comfort on nights when they couldn't sleep. That's when I realized the emotion that started as something personal had turned into something universal. My pain had found meaning beyond me. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had held back that night, if I had sung the song perfectly, technically flawless, but without feeling. Maybe the headlines wouldn't exist. Maybe no one would have noticed, but then it wouldn't have been real. And I think people can always feel what's real. Behind every performance, there's a story. Not always about love or heartbreak, sometimes it's about growing, letting go, or simply trying to be understood. For me, that night was about remembering that I'm still human, that I still feel everything deeply no matter how long I've been on stage. I sat with those thoughts for a while. The members noticed, of course. Namjoon came to me one evening and said, "You don't have to explain anything, Taehyung. Your emotions are what make your art beautiful." That meant more to me than he probably realized. Because sometimes when you show your real self, you start wondering if people will still accept you. But hearing that from someone who's seen every side of me, it gave me peace. A few days later, I watched a fan-made video, a compilation of that performance with soft background music and comments scrolling across the screen. I saw messages like, "He must have loved deeply. You can feel his soul in this song. Whatever he's feeling, we feel it too." I didn't cry, but my chest felt heavy, the good kind of heavy. The kind that reminds you your work matters. In that moment, I realized something simple yet powerful. Maybe the person behind my emotions isn't as important as the emotion itself. Maybe what people truly connect with isn't who I'm singing about, it's why I'm singing. Music is my way of saying what I can't say in interviews, what I can't post online. It's the only language I know that doesn't need translation. That's why I keep putting my heart into every note, even when it hurts. Because pain, when turned into art, becomes something healing, not just for me, but for everyone who listens. And as much as fans might stay curious or suspicious, I hope they always remember, sometimes mystery is part of the beauty. Some stories are meant to stay between the singer and the song. There's something about silence after a storm that feels both peaceful and heavy. After all the attention and conversations about that night, I found myself craving quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty, but the kind that lets you breathe, reflect, and find balance again. Sometimes people forget that behind every artist, there's a person who still needs space to think and feel without an audience. For me, that balance has always been fragile. On stage, I give everything. Off stage, I try to put the pieces back together. After that performance, I started spending more time alone, not because I was sad, but because I needed to understand myself better. I would go on long walks, usually at night when the city sleeps. There's something about the cool air and the sound of footsteps that helps me clear my thoughts. I'd put on my headphones, play soft jazz, and just exist. No cameras, no expectations, just me. Sometimes I'd sit on the rooftop of my apartment watching the sky change colors before sunrise. I've always loved the quiet moments before the world wakes up. They remind me that no matter how chaotic everything gets, there's still calmness somewhere waiting to be found. People often ask me how I manage to balance my personal emotions with my career, how I keep performing, smiling, and creating even when I'm going through something. The truth is, I don't always balance it perfectly. There are days when it's hard. There are days when my emotions and my art feel like they're fighting each other. But music has always been my bridge between the two. When I sing, I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not pretending to be fine or forcing happiness. I'm just being real. And I think that's what fans connect to, not the perfection, but the honesty. They can feel when something comes from a genuine place. There was a time I thought being strong meant never showing emotion. I used to think that vulnerability would make people question my professionalism or my focus. But over time, I learned that strength isn't about hiding pain, it's about learning how to carry it gracefully. I've seen so many artists lose themselves trying to maintain an image. But I've promised myself that no matter how far I go, I'll always stay true to who I am, the boy who fell in love with music because it made him feel something real. That's why, even after that emotional performance, I didn't want to erase it or hide from it. I wanted to understand it. I watched the recording again, not to analyze my expressions, but to see what my heart was trying to tell me. And I realized something. The sadness I felt wasn't just about one person, it was about growth, about learning to let go of people, places, and moments that shaped me but couldn't stay forever. When fans said they could feel my emotions, it reminded me that pain isn't always a weakness. Sometimes it's proof that you've lived honestly. You can't write, paint, or sing about love if you've never been brave enough to feel it deeply. As time passed, I started writing more small notes, lyrics, even random thoughts that came to me during late nights. I wrote about peace, about memories, about missing someone without sadness. Those words eventually became the foundation for new music. It's funny how heartbreak can plant the seeds of something beautiful. There's a certain freedom that comes with acceptance when you stop asking why and start saying thank you. I stopped trying to erase the past. Instead, I began to see it as a teacher. Every emotion, every goodbye, every song, they were all preparing me to become the artist I am now. And as for the fans who still wonder who that song was for, maybe it doesn't matter anymore because the truth is that performance wasn't about one person. It was about every person I've ever loved, every connection that ever made me feel alive. When I look back now, I realize that the emotions behind that night weren't a weakness, they were my truth. The same truth that drives me every time I step on stage, hold the mic, and let my heart speak through melody. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be this. Don't be afraid to feel deeply, because one day those feelings will become the songs that help someone else feel less alone. Love has always been something mysterious to me, both beautiful and painful, gentle yet powerful. It can lift you higher than you've ever been, but it can also humble you in ways you never expect. I think that's why it always finds its way into my music, no matter how hard I try to hide it. There was a time when I thought love had to be perfect, full of laughter, late night talks, promises that never fade. But as I grew older, I realized that love isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about two people choosing to stay when everything else feels uncertain. And sometimes it's also about letting go when holding on would only cause more pain. That's something I learned the hard way. The person behind those emotions, she wasn't someone I wanted to forget. She was someone I had to thank. Because without her, I wouldn't understand what it means to love quietly, to lose gracefully, and to keep believing in something pure even after it breaks. When I sing about love now, it's different. It's not about longing or regret. It's about gratitude for every feeling, every heartbreak, every connection that left an imprint on my soul. I think that's what people hear when they say, my voice feels emotional. It's not sadness anymore, it's truth. There's a line I once wrote in my notebook. Love doesn't end when someone leaves. It ends when you stop feeling grateful for what they gave you. I still believe that because even though people may come and go, the love they brought into your life stays. It becomes part of who you are, part of the art you create, the person you become. Music has always been my way of saying the things I can't say face to face. It's my letter to the past, my bridge to the present, and my promise to the future. And maybe that's why that one performance, the one everyone talked about, felt so raw. Because it wasn't just a song, it was me trying to find peace with everything I once loved and lost. When I see fans reacting emotionally, when they say my voice made them cry or helped them through something painful, it reminds me that love doesn't end where it hurts. It continues through the way we heal, through the art we make, and through the people who feel it with us. I remember once being asked during a photo shoot, what inspires your music the most? I thought for a moment and said, human connection. Because it's true, every song I sing comes from a place of connection. Not just romantic love, but the kind of connection that makes you feel seen, understood, and safe. The kind that reminds you that even in your loneliest moments, someone out there feels the same way. There are times when I think about what it would be like to meet that person again. Not to go back, but just to say thank you. Thank you for teaching me how to feel deeply, for helping me find my voice, and for reminding me that art without emotion is empty. But even if that moment never comes, I'm at peace with it. Some chapters don't need a sequel. They just need to be appreciated for what they were honest, real, and beautiful in their own time. As I continue writing and performing, I carry those emotions with me. They shape the way I interpret every lyric, the way I look at the audience, the way I close my eyes and let the melody take over. Because in every note, there's a piece of my heart, a memory, a lesson, a feeling that refuses to fade. And maybe that's why fans became suspicious that night. They could feel that what I was singing wasn't just part of the show, it was a confession. A quiet one hidden in the melody, disguised in the performance, but still real. And maybe that's what made it powerful. As artists, we often hide behind metaphors and melodies, but the truth always finds its way out. You can't sing about love without remembering who taught you how to love. You can't sing about loss without recalling what it felt like to lose. That's why I've learned to stop running from my emotions. They are not my weakness, they are my greatest source of strength. If I could share one thing with everyone who listens to my songs, it would be this. Don't be afraid of feeling too much. Don't rush to forget the people who once made your heart race. Even the hardest goodbyes have beauty in them if you look closely enough. Because every feeling you've ever had, love, loss, joy, sorrow, they're all part of your melody. When I look back now, I can see how much that one song changed me, not just as a singer, but as a person. There was something about performing it that night that stripped away every layer I used to hide behind. Every note felt like it was pulling truth from somewhere deep inside me, and I couldn't resist it. It was almost like the music had its own power, its own honesty that demanded mine in return. After that performance, I spent a lot of quiet nights thinking about what it means to be vulnerable on stage. For years, I thought professionalism meant hiding your emotions, keeping a straight face no matter what was happening inside you. But now I know it's the opposite. Real professionalism, real artistry, is when you allow your emotions to exist freely but still guide them with intention. It's when you let people see your heart, but in a way that brings them comfort, not concern. I used to be afraid of being misunderstood. That's why I was always careful with what I said, how I moved, how much I revealed. But music doesn't care about control. It's pure emotion and it demands honesty. When I finally accepted that, I realized that being misunderstood is a small price to pay for being real. That's when my whole perspective shifted. I stopped worrying about who might be listening for hints about my personal life. Instead, I focused on sharing emotions that everyone could feel because love, pain, confusion, they belong to all of us. When fans said they could hear someone behind my voice, they weren't wrong, but maybe that someone isn't a specific person. Maybe it's everyone I've ever loved, lost, or even just crossed paths with for a brief moment. Maybe it's the world itself. There's something strangely healing about that thought that my voice carries more than my own story. It carries pieces of everyone who has touched my life. It's like each song becomes a mosaic of memories, emotions, and moments I can't relive but can still honor. That's what I want my music to be, a space where both I and my listeners can breathe, remember, and feel safe. I remember when I first started writing lyrics seriously, I was still young, still learning how to translate emotion into words. I would sit alone for hours, sometimes all night, just trying to capture a feeling before it disappeared. There were times I cried out of frustration because words felt too small to hold what I wanted to say. But that struggle taught me something. It taught me how to listen, not just to melodies, but to silence. Because sometimes silence carries more truth than words ever can. Now, when I stand on stage and sing those same emotional songs, I don't feel sadness anymore. I feel calm. It's like looking at an old photograph. It still stirs something inside, but it no longer hurts. It's just warm, familiar, like a friend you once loved deeply and can now smile at from afar. Fans often tell me that my music feels comforting, even when it's melancholic. That's one of the most meaningful compliments I could ever receive. Because that's exactly what I want, not to make people sad, but to make them feel seen. To remind them that it's okay to feel too much, to remember, to miss someone, to cry, to heal. We all go through it. We just express it differently. My way happens to be through music. There's a quiet kind of maturity that comes with accepting your past. I used to think healing meant erasing the pain, but now I understand it means learning to live with it peacefully. You don't have to forget the people or moments that once defined you. You just have to stop letting them hurt you. That's the real freedom. So when people ask me, who was that song about? I smile. Because maybe the truth doesn't need to be explained. Maybe it's enough to just feel it. The song isn't about one person anymore. It's about the human heart itself, how fragile it can be, and yet how endlessly resilient it remains. That's the thing about emotions. They evolve. What once made me cry now makes me grateful. What once broke me now builds me. That's why I keep singing. Not because I want to relive the past, but because I want to honor it. Every performance becomes a way to say, thank you, I'm okay now. When the lights go down and the last note fades, I often close my eyes for a moment. I think about how far I've come from the boy who used to write songs in secret to the man who can finally stand on stage and let his heart speak without fear. It's been a long, sometimes lonely road, but I wouldn't change a thing because every scar, every song, every emotion led me here to this exact moment of peace. And maybe that's what my fans see when they look at me now. Not a mystery, not heartbreak, but growth. A quiet kind of happiness that doesn't need to shout. A peace that was earned, not given. The person behind my emotions, she'll always exist in the music, not as a ghost, but as a melody that reminds me who I was and who I've become. And as long as I keep singing, she'll live there softly, beautifully, forever. When I think about that night now, the lights, the silence, the emotion that filled the room, I realize it wasn't just a performance. It was a conversation between my heart and everyone who was listening. For a long time, I was afraid of showing too much of myself, afraid that people would misunderstand the emotions behind my songs. But that night taught me something important. Honesty always finds its way into the melody. No matter how hard you try to hide it, your heart speaks louder than your words. Maybe that's why music is so powerful. It connects us in ways nothing else can. When I sing, I'm not just expressing my own story. I'm giving a voice to everyone who's ever felt love, loss, or longing. Every trembling note, every quiet breath, every small pause carries a piece of what it means to be human. That's what I love most about being an artist. I get to feel deeply and I get to share that feeling with all of you. People often ask me if I've moved on from the emotions behind that song, and the truth is, yes, I have, but not by forgetting. I moved on by understanding, by realizing that emotions don't disappear, they just transform into something softer, something wiser. The pain I once felt became art. The sadness turned into strength. The love became gratitude. And now, every time I sing that song, I don't feel broken anymore. I feel whole. To everyone who listened, who cried, who felt something because of that song, thank you. You might not know it, but you helped me heal. When I see your faces in the audience, when I hear your voices singing along, I remember that I'm not alone in my feelings. Thank you for listening, for feeling, for being part of this journey with me. I'll keep singing not just for the past, but for the future we create together. Because as long as there are emotions to feel, stories to tell, and hearts willing to listen, the music will never end. This is Taehyung, and this was my truth.